You've got some questions for me. One did come over the email, so we'll start with that one, and then we'll see where we go from there. Trying to solve a financial problem with little success. Well, you've come to the wrong person there. I've got absolutely no financial acumen whatsoever. Oh no, it's not about that at all. Okay, I can only sit with I don't know and unpleasant feelings. There's much self-concern saying I'll be blamed for the outcome. What you've been up to. This lessens as I watch its arising and passing away, also saying, okay, I'll face the blame should it happen. Please, would you comment? So the meditator, who is very welcome to make themselves known if they wish, but to begin with, the meditator has got many of the bases covered here. There is a problem in life, a supposed problem. There is the habitual conceptual fixation, fixing a problem as a concrete, solid, ongoing issue. So what they're doing is they're sitting with the unpleasant feelings of this apparent problem, recognizing that they can't really know what's going on because life is so deeply complex. So there is mindfulness of the anxiety and the unpleasant feelings and the sense of being on the threshold of being blamed. So there's self-concern, but there's acknowledgement of the self-concern. There's the ability to watch the arising and passing away of these feelings and these habitual tendencies and these mental formations. There's a willingness, in a sense, there's a willingness to face one's karma by saying, okay, I'll face the blame should it happen, because none of us can escape praise or blame. They are worldly conditions. Gain and loss are worldly conditions. We know, fortunes can fluctuate in life. So all that's going on. So what's left? What else can we talk about? Because in terms of managing the issue, there's lots that's in place. But to my mind, it misses the basic, most fundamental aspect of the entire thing. I wonder if anyone would hazard a guess as to what that might be. We have the hand waving thing, don't we? Where's that? Where's that again? Is it in chat? Reactions, isn't it? Raise hand reactions. Ah, Robert, hello.
Good evening, Paul. Could it be that the meditator is just thinking?
We did talk about the habitual conceptual fixation of the problem as an ongoing thing, and that's what thinking does. So that's definitely going on. So yeah, thanks, Robert. So that is definitely going on. Natalie, hello. Natalie?
Yeah, hi, sorry. I was pressing the wrong thing. Yeah, I admit it's my question.
Oh!
So yeah, what could I possibly say? Because it was, yes. I think for myself, I think I've really not been admitting the reality of it, that there is suffering and these things have come about, and just taking the whole reality of it, accepting it, and realizing it can only be like this.
With the greatest respect, I don't think you have taken the whole reality of it. I think what's causing the distress is the failure to take in the whole reality of it.
Oh, right, okay, right.
And what I mean by that is, why do we watch things arise and pass away? Not just the rise and fall of the breath. Why do we watch sensations, feelings, perceptions, memories, shape and color, sound, taste, touch, smell. What are we trying to correct? Dave?
I think it's to sort of correct this misperception that things are satisfactory. That
Deeper
they
than that.
aren't, and
Deeper
that
than that. Deeper than that. You're right. But what is it that makes things unsatisfactory at the most fundamental level?
uncontrollability.
Deeper than that. What is it that makes things uncontrollable? Mark, hello.
Hey everyone. I was transience. The transience and non-self of all phenomena.
So what does that mean about the nature of experience? So many hands. Mark, you want to go for it, or Karen?
I'll let someone else.
Yeah, Karen. Hello. Oh, you need to unmute there.
How about confusion?
Just waiting for Karen. Thanks. Karen, can you unmute?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was looking for the icon at the top. I was going to say the same as Mark about that everything's transient and therefore unsatisfactory, but we've kind of said that now. Yeah,
we have, and it's great. We're all exactly on the same page with that. Absolutely.
Mm.
But what is it? What does that say about the nature of reality, Mandy?
No, I was thinking another direction, Paul. I was more thinking about the attachment and craving. Not.
But that comes out of the failure to recognize the true nature of reality.
Yeah.
So the craving and the attachment, definitely. And we're able to manage that. And that's what we've discussed so far: the ability to manage those things. What is the fundamental error that's going on? Lucy, hello.
Hey, I was going to say that reality can't be relied on.
Okay, I mean, we're so warm. We're sort of dancing around it. The most fundamental aspect of it. Birgit, hello, good evening.
Good evening. Like that things arise and pass away due to conditions, and that that it just happens.
Okay, so conditions. So what is the fundamental nature? So I've got to play with it again. What is the fundamental nature of these sounds? If I do it properly.
So there's nothing solid, Paul. Are you meaning it's not nothing solid, so nothing to control?
Excellent. Where is all of this happening? The beautiful thing about a singing bowl is you can't really locate it in terms of dimension. It's got this lovely, I don't know if you can pick that up via a computer, but here it doesn't feel like the sound is coming from the bowl. It feels like the sound could be coming from anywhere. What does that suggest? Oh, right. Sorry, you're putting your hands up and I'm too busy playing with it. Okay, Les, we haven't heard from Les. Hello, Les.
Hello there.
Hello.
I was going to say that it's basically all illusion.
Now we're really getting close. Every phenomena that appears to be there is actually simply the product of other conditions, which themselves are just phenomena, which are just appear to be there, but they're not located anywhere. Because remember, location is a perception. Time is a perception. Dimension, perception. And perceptions are arising and passing away due to conditions. So where is any of this actually happening? I don't want anyone pointing to their minds, because you're just pointing to your skull.
It's not happening anywhere.
It's not happening anywhere. We're nowhere. This is a spaceless space. Free free of the problem of the fixation into time and space, free from the fixation into thingness. So the only thing missing from this is not that the person should have realized emptiness by now, but the recognition that all you can do with these financial issues is a form of self-control, a form of self-management to manage anxiety, to manage the sense of being out of control or the fear of being blamed. And we need that, but we can't stop there. That will not resolve the problem of suffering. You're just managing it. You need to do is to go deeper and deeper and deeper into sensory phenomena, conscious experience, and go deeply into seeing the conditioned arising of phenomena and how it simply arises and passes away, and that it has no independent existence. It has no duration at all. Nothing has duration at the ultimate level. And everything that you are worried about and concerned about is an absolute dream. It has no fundamental basis. We're nowhere. Nothing is being done. Nothing, in reality, nothing is arising and passing away. We're only looking at things arise and pass away in order to cut the clinging attachment to this fixating of a solid conceptual, independently existing world. I don't see, because I always come back to this. This is like, people stop short. And it requires constant, sort of not constant, but regular reminding of the fact that where the Buddha is taking us in terms of insight is beyond all of this, to the realization of the absolute magic of existence. Just that discovery then puts everything into context. So it's not like you won't have financial, you become enlightened. Doesn't mean that's the end of your mundane existence. But now it's seen in a completely new context, which realizes that what an absolute and utter dream this is. It doesn't matter how much money you've got or haven't got. It doesn't matter the threat that, the financial system might collapse and somebody might nick all your money. It literally doesn't matter once you've understood the true context. Like, when we wake up from a dream when we're asleep at night, there might be some residual concern about what happened in the dream, but then we go, oh, it's just a dream. And you drop any issue. You might have been being chased by some monster in your dream, and you wake up going, oh, I've been chased by a monster in my dream. And then you go, hang on, it was a dream. Oh, I'm not actually being chased. And so that's what's missing in for everyone. That's what's missing, is seeing the context in which, and we could talk about what's happening in the world, the wars and the terrible, all the terrible problems and all the arguments. And it is literally, people are fighting over nothing in reality. And that is so deeply, the Buddha's teaching is so fundamentally revolutionary. It's not about just improving your lot. It's not about just being a bit calmer. It is a total revolution in your understanding of the nature of life. All right, rant over, Mark.
Good rant, love it. I was going to ask, so in terms of, say, something like greed, how much would you say, Paul, is, in terms of looking at the transience and the conditionality and of greed and the feelings and so forth that it conditions and what have you, versus, so sorry, my question is, on one hand, we can look at it from the perspective of noting the 3 marks. And on the other hand, can we not also look at greed as how it's like a habitual response and how it is being used to distract ourselves from another, you know, from everything. So
Don't create a problem out of it.
So, I mean, right, okay, yeah, sure, okay, good answer. Yeah, I suppose I am. I was going to ask which is better? Is it looking at the 3 marks, or is it looking at the reason for the habitual tendency? But yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah,
whatever, both.
Yeah, because it's treating it as a problem that needs to be resolved, rather than treating it as a phenomena that arises, that is empty of any inherent existence because it's arising out of conditions. It's just the ringing bell of existence is just ringing in that particular way, with that particular frequency, with that particular resonance. You don't have to explain it.
No.
Beyond its place in the conditioned process. So we know that there's sensory contact, which is the coming together of the object, the base, and consciousness, which gives rise to the feeling. If there's no contact, there's no feeling. The feeling, pleasant feeling, gives rise to the tendency towards greed. That's the resultant phase, all arising out of nowhere, just conditions. It's not stored anywhere. And then there is the arising of the volitional impulse wanting more. And that's the greed.
Yes.
And that's as far as you need to understand it.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Because otherwise we get caught, we get trapped in self-concern in regards to greed.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It just becomes more
Problem solved.
Yeah.
And none of this, you see, because this is the thing. It's like none of the problems in the world need solving. Trying to solve the problems of the world is what generates the problems in the world.
So it's the answer then, not that we're looking for one, but if we were hypothetically looking for an answer around this, is not to seek the answer to oh, why am I so greedy, but actually just to note the transient and conditional nature of it.
Yes, exactly. Now, what you're referring to is what obsesses people on the first path, because it is the play of the first 3 fetters, which is, it's not about the greed, it's about how the discovery of this greed relates to me and my personality and my persona and how I like to see myself and how I want other people to see me or how other people do see me. You know, it's
Whereas if greed is seen to dissolve at the point at which it's noted, then, you know, there's no problem.
Because that's
the problem.
Because as we said before, greed is not self. That's the reality. Now, I'm looking at this in a very clean way, and we all know meditation is never that clean. But you reach the point, especially in regards to fetters, and greed is a fetter, where you see where the insight deepens sufficiently, your mindfulness, your clear comprehension, your concentration, your wisdom deepens sufficiently, where you do indeed see condition-dependent origination unfolding in exactly that order. And it isn't that you get rid of the greed, it is that you sever the bond of ignorance in that moment, because you see the whole process and you see there's no self in any of that process. It's all happening born of itself due to conditions. That is deep, 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 deep wisdom, right? And that's the threshold to the fruition, is that somebody sees that process of whichever fetter it is on whichever path, that they reach the point where the wisdom is so keen, so deep, so complete, that they cut through with wisdom condition-dependent origination. Hilda, hello.
Hello. I have a different question about
Yes, I'll move on.
pleasant and unpleasant and neutral feelings. So the beginning of this short meditation, I had a headache, and I'm just looking at this headache, and I'm just me labeling it a headache is not a nice thing to have. This is like an unpleasant feeling, but then that goes away quite quickly, and I can just look at the sensation, and I'm just curious about what happens in that moment when it stops being an issue. Does it turn into like a neutral feeling, or is it just that I don't have like the aversion towards this sensation, because it's just like something. It doesn't matter that much what it is, like a throbbing sensation. Yeah, if you could just say something about because it's a neutral feeling that I struggle to see. I think pleasant and unpleasant is easier, but then when it stops being, say, unpleasant, does that mean it's neutral, or what happens there?
Okay, I mean, there's a lot in there, actually. Firstly, feelings do not turn into other feelings. Feelings do not pass through time. There is a sensory contact. In this case, there is sensory contact of sensation. Pressure, let's say it's the sensation of pressure, along with a perception, head, and a painful feeling. That's one contact. And there is a whole series of contacts arising and passing away, which gives to the untutored mind, gives the impression of continuity, of something lasting through time. But in actual fact, it's a whole series of sensory contacts, sensations with self-similar pressure, self-similar perceptions, self-similar feelings, but they are all unique, discrete occasions, all in a long line, one after the other, which gives the sense of location, sense of, oh, it's happening here, or it's, sensation, the sense of time, passing time as well. So it's all loaded into that. So what can happen is that if you respond to the conceptual fixation, if there is no mindfulness and wisdom, there is the habitual conceptual fixation of the idea of a headache, which rarefies it, which means it then becomes your reality that you have a headache. And of course, our habitual reaction to the discovery of something like a headache is to say, this is bad, it's painful, life is wrong. And so, yes, we then act in response to that stimuli with aversion. The consequence of acting with aversion is, in subsequent moments of contact, pressure, there is renewed painful feeling, because we're getting the immediate results of our aversion. Okay, so if you're a Buddhist meditator and you realize that there is this habitual conceptual fixation of the idea of headache, and instead of just accepting that as the reality, you go, that's not really the reality. There's just like this conceptual skin. Let's just pierce through that transparent skin and look at what's actually really there. And you go, oh, it's discrete moments of pressure, perception, feeling, all arising and passing away due to conditions in series. It's like a scintillating field of phenomena arising and passing away. Because you're looking at it in that way, you become fascinated with what's unfolding. So the subsequent moments of contact don't give rise to painful feeling. They give rise to either neutral feeling, or because the pleasurable interest is getting established, it can even become a fascinating, pleasurable experience.
Yeah, this is what I've experienced. And then I've been thinking, okay.
No, this can't be right.
Yeah. That was a headache a minute ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why I'm reiterating this idea of habitual conceptual fixation. Can you see how we fixate this idea into being? We give it form, we give it life, because we've named it, name and form. We give it life, we give it a kind of solidity and a deluded sense of solidity by calling it a headache and then treating it as a headache. It becomes our reality. But when you look with insight, what seems to be like this opaque, separately existing phenomenon, headache, becomes transparent, and you can as it were, see through the conceptual framework and look more deeply at what's actually there. And then you get a whole different set of results. So whatever you were doing, it was right, it was correct.
So if it turns into like a neutral or a kind of almost pleasant feeling, that's to be expected.
You're allowed to enjoy having a headache, it turns out.
Okay.
I mean, the example I always give is when I was in the shrine room and there was somebody using a pneumatic drill outside, and all the sounds of the drill were like sparks of resonating sound just dancing around the shrine room. And it became a pleasurable experience of just watching these sparks of sound just arising and passing away.
Right. So the fact that something turns interesting in this way, it doesn't mean that we're craving for it to stay that way.
If you're just observing and engaging mindfully with what's unfolding, you're not doing anything inefficient.
Okay. And is it still meaningful to label it at this point then? As neutral or pleasant,
Yes, you want to recognize, going back to what I was saying earlier, that feelings do not change into one another. There are discrete occasions of feeling which arise and pass away, and so there are different feelings arising, and some of them will be pleasant, some of them will be unpleasant, and a lot of them will be neutral. And going back to your point about the neutral feelings, I struggled with understanding what was meant by neutral feeling for a long time. And so what I did in the end is I knew that feeling arose on contact. So I looked at sensory contacts, 5 physical senses and contacts with mind. And with each one, I just analyzed it and recognized whether it was a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling, or was it neutral feeling? To put that another way, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And what I discovered was the vast, vast majority of contacts produce neutral feelings. And the Buddha said that in regards to pleasant feelings, that tends towards a greedy response. In terms of painful feelings, it tends towards aversion. And in regard to neutral feeling, it tends towards ignoring. And of course, it made perfect sense. I've just been ignoring neutral feelings all this time. And the reason that life has to be mostly made up of neutral feelings is, can you imagine if every contact was either pleasant or unpleasant? We'd get nothing done. So it makes absolute perfect sense that the majority of the feeling that arises upon sensory contact is neutral. But they don't stand out because they're neutral. So,
thank you.
Great question. Thank you very much. David Servo, hello.
Hello, I wanted to go back on Hilda's example.
Mm-hmm.
So with the focus on the blood flow that is creating this re-arising of pressure in the brain to make that headache be an example of body consciousness?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
blood flow is another conceptual, that belongs to the conventional reality, like headache does. But there's mindfulness of body in terms of the pressure, say. There's also mindfulness of feelings. There's also mindfulness of mental formations in terms of the kinds of responses that arise. So body consciousness, so mindfulness of materiality in that instance would be, yeah, the sensation of pressure,
Yeah.
if that's what it is, or sharpness or dullness, or
Oh, I see. And then labeling it as like the blood flow would be the conceptual formation afterward.
that is a conceptual overlay. Yeah. No, it might be accurate in terms of, you know, the way bodies work, but in terms of just ultimate reality, it's what is. I mean, I know that by stating something to be pressure, that is a concept, but it is a concept that relates to something which is fundamentally real in that moment, which is pressure. Whereas blood flow is a conceptual reference which doesn't have its correlate in ultimate reality at that moment. So it's a conceptual reality that we've made in that moment, which again is why I keep going back to this idea of the habitual conceptual fixation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I might need some more thought going into that, but it is really important to understand that we do fixate reality into a certain shape. So that's the point I'm trying to get across. But yeah, no, David, you are right. Yes. So pressure is materiality. Thinking about headaches, blood flow, that sort of thing, those are mental formations. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling, those are feelings. Anybody else got a question for me? Peter, hello. Peter, do you want to unmute?
Right.
There we go.
Thank you. I'd like to hear something about exploring confusion.
Oh, yes. Have you got anything in addition I can work with, or literally?
Just that it's an intriguing concept, but there's very little familiarity with it at the moment, and I was hoping you could throw some stuff in to give me more to think about, as it were.
Okay, let me open it up.
Yeah, sure.
Can anyone describe confusion to me? What is it?
Well, I'm only thinking.
Okay, go for it, Peter. Yeah.
I'm only thinking of what you've said previously, in that it's the third kilesa. Once greed and hatred have been dealt with, what you're left with then is what confusion, or confusion underlying whatever else is left.
What do you mean, confusion or delusion?
Confusion being what underlies delusion. We're deluded in order to deny confusion, so to speak.
A bit tangly. Let me just open it up. Let me just open it up, Peter, and see what other people think about confusion, and see if we can get some definitions going, or some examples, or some experiences. Rebecca, hello. You're muted.
Yeah, I've just unmuted myself. That was typical, on off, on off. For me, it's if I've got if I don't know what to note, then I note confusion. If it's kind of like chaotic, and
so there's a sense of unknowingness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Dave, you've got your hand up. So
yeah, I was thinking of it in terms of the actions which result out of a wrong view. So you know, kind of actions, if you think that by sort of righteous wars or whatever, where you think by killing someone else it will solve your problem, so there's a confusion of ideas and it results in actions.
Yeah, it's a lack of wisdom, isn't it? I'd say that's more akin to delusion.
Right.
I mean, they're very closely linked, aren't they? Delusion and confusion. I mean, people are confused if they think that sort of killing people is going to lead to their happiness. There is a very deep confusion going on. But, you know, in terms of views, I'd say those are delusions, or there are delusions which are causing those kinds of actions. I thought of it more in terms of just the state of confusion. Mark, what do you think? You've got something to add?
I was thinking that it would be the activity of ignoring would condition confusion, because if someone is not paying attention, if someone is not, if someone is ignoring, I guess it's a bit like wrong views, as Dave was saying, then there is confusion in the way that what is actually being presented in reality, and if they're ignoring what is actually going on, then there will be a state of confusion.
I mean, I would certainly make the point that ignorance underpins everything that we're talking about. And ignorance is of two kinds. It's not seeing and not knowing. So you can say, well, there's an immediate confusion. The confused mind doesn't know or doesn't see, and the deluded mind doesn't know. They're very closely interrelated. Les, hello.
Yes, hello again. I was going to say that confusion can occur sometimes because there is too much information.
Yes, absolutely. Do you not think we live in a far more, that people are a lot more confused because they've got their hands on so much more information thanks to our technological age and the internet and so forth? So yeah, I'd agree with that. Lucy?
When I normally note eventually confusion, it's normally just waking up or going to sleep in a meditation, and it takes a while to note it, and then I would describe it as I don't know which way is up. I've had these completely nonsensical thoughts or sentences going through my head, but in my confused mind at the time, it's like, yes, this makes perfect sense. And then when I catch myself at it, it's like, oh God, I've been doing this for however long. And so that's my kind of definition of confusion. I don't know if that's accurate.
Well, I mean, again, we do come back to this point that we're not necessarily looking for objective agreement, but rather bringing out, well, what is this? What is a confused mind? When I'm confused, what is that like? For me, and we gradually get to an agreed kind of, a general sense of what we mean by confusion, because it can take on many, many different forms. Like for me, I remember once we had a meditator on integrated retreat, and I was with him in the cellar, and I'd just gone down there. Literally, he was already there, and I'd gone down to pick something up, and he has a very strong tendency towards confusion, very, very strong. And he managed in that moment to turn my mind off. And I was literally down in the cellar, not knowing why I'd gone down there, barely being able to remember who I was. And I literally just had to walk away. I had to walk back up the stairs. I could just about tell where they were. And I got back out. I went outside, and it all just like disappeared again. And so that took the form of this, like, it's like a vacancy. It's like, oh, I've no idea what is what right now. So that was a very weird experience, because no one had I hadn't successfully turned off my own mind. But this guy can do it with ease without even really thinking about it. Oh my goodness. So to my mind, it has the flavor of everything that we've been talking about. And so the question is, well, how can I be mindful of that? It's a bit like when I went to see Alan and said, well, how can I be mindful of ignoring? Because I'm ignoring. I deeply suspect he wrote an entire lecture based on that conversation, which he called The Problem of Ignorance. And I think that sometimes we just have to accept that state of not knowing, not comprehending. And it's only in hindsight, because even though it's in hindsight, after all, what is it that we need to understand about confusion? Based on everything that I've been talking about this evening. Do we have to solve the problem of confusion? Anyone? Anyone?
No.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, sorry, Mandy, yeah.
I'm not sure, but is it that if as long as you're conscious and aware of that you are confused and in a confused state of mind, there's no problem because confusion can arise and it can disappear?
Yeah, so you're either going to be conscious of the fact that there's confusion in the mind, which means you're muddled, you don't know which way is up, temporarily, and you can say to yourself, this is a state of confusion. And instead of trying to solve it, which would only exacerbate the confusion, you just say, well, I'll just rest with this confusion and perhaps, do something else for a while, go for a walk, do whatever, just to allow that state of confusion to subside and another state arise. Or you were so in the confusion that there was no possibility of any mindfulness. And then subsequently, you can go, oh, yeah, I see now, I was really confused. Even though it's in hindsight, it's still a valid insight. It's still a valid noting. And you see that it was indeed confusion. And you see also that the confusion was indeed transient. It could not have been me. It can't have been mine. It cannot be myself. It arose outside of my control. I wouldn't have chosen it. It's there. It's difficult to deal with. Like all these inefficiencies are difficult to deal with, but I'm not trying to solve it. I'm just trying to clearly acknowledge what it is and its core fundamental characteristics, which is that it's transient, it's ungraspable, it arises due to conditions, it's outside of my control, all that kind of juicy stuff. Does that make sense, Peter? Does that help?
Yes. It's what I understood from the idea of exploring. Exploring throws all this together, and in doing so, the confusion is objectified. It ceases to be a subjective. Oh my God. Identity ceases to be a subjective identity. When we start exploring, when we start doing the things that you just listed, we then objectify it and it loses its grip.
But yeah, we see that ultimately we see it in its true nature. So isn't it weird? It's like, again, we're not trying to solve the problem of confusion, but as there's greater mindfulness, as there is greater clear comprehension of states of confusion, and we understand what they are, both at the time or retrospectively, those states of confusion therefore do not last as long, right? Because there's greater wisdom into them and understanding of them. We've always got to come back to this thing of the Buddha talked about the first noble truth, that there is suffering and confusion is a state of suffering. But he was always saying that we have to understand suffering. We abandon the causes of suffering. So we're not trying to get rid of a state of confusion. We want to understand the state of confusion with mindfulness, developing clear comprehension of it. Again, like I say, either at the time we're able to recognize it for what it is, or subsequently, it doesn't matter. It's still valid noting and valid insight, and recognizing, actually seeing that state of suffering in the form of confusion is transient. It's dependently originated, it's ephemeral, it arises, it passes away. We've not solved the problem of confusion, we've understood it, so it's no longer a problem. Some of us are just naturally more confused than others. For some people, confusion is not a major issue. For others, it is the major issue. But for that other person, maybe greed is the real problem. You know, we're all different. Ellen, hello.
Hello. This has been super helpful because I think I've been ignoring when I have a confused state come up. What I do take note of is my ill will towards that condition. So that's what ends up making it, but I skip right over the confused part, and I know what the conditions are.
You just berate yourself.
I regularly bang on about, you know, technology, and so let's just say the fact that you have multiple windows open on a computer. It's like all of a sudden I see 3 or 4 things at the same time. It's like, and in my lifetime, I have never been a confused person. It's a very weak trait for me, but of late, in the last number of years, anyhow, this is super helpful. Okay. So that, of course, it would fade, and then what I'm noticing is the ill will towards the fact I don't know what to do next. So, but then the confusion has to have gone because now I'm in ill will.
Yes, exactly. And that goes back to what Les was saying about like increased amount of information does tend towards greater confusion. It's, you know, the confusion of choice, you know, it's like, and who to believe and what to believe. And Dave, yes. Yeah, thanks, Ellen, that's great.
I was just had a question. I was just sort of wondering whether you thought that confusion changes during your lifetime. I mean, I suppose I find as I'm getting older, there does seem to be times of more confusion, and certainly dealing with older relatives, there's a lot more confusion with them. Do you think that's a sort of thing that's true, or?
Yes, I agree entirely. Again, yeah, same thing. Elderly relatives and seeing greater confusion because of loss of memory as well. A lessening in one's ability to perceive. It's just getting older, isn't it? So yeah, so not, in that sense, nothing is fixed because it is all dependent on conditions. And if the body is wearing out, I mean, I've noticed, like, physically, I actually got out for a cycle at the weekend, and now I've got an inflamed left knee. Oh, great! So now I'm sort of putting arnica all over it, trying to get the swelling down, and now I smell of arnica. And then it's just aging. And so in all these ways, in all these different ways, like, the body is not going to respond as well. And so we have to accept, you know, one of the beautiful things about this training is it's not that it's going to stop you losing your memory as you get older. It's going to stop you being put out by that. So you just won't suffer as much because you realize that memory is dependently originated. It's not me. It's not stored anywhere. It depends on conditions. And if those conditions have changed, you will get a different set of results. And so as we get older, yeah, things like there is more confusion. There is a tendency to be less balanced physically. You know, there are all kinds of these issues that arise. So we cannot fall into the trap of fixating certain qualities as being me, because those qualities are going to let you down. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but they will. And the more you cling on to them as being me, mine, or myself, the more you will suffer. The more you see that they are dependently originated, and it's just the universe ringing its singing bowl with whatever it is, the more freedom from passionately wanting it to be different there is. And it's freedom from passionately wanting it to be different that it is. That's the important thing, not whether you're have a tendency towards confusion, not whether you have a tendency to, you know, not be able to remember things. Yeah. Sarah. Oh, you've gone. Jay.
Hi.
Oh, you're there. Okay. Be with you in a sec, Jay.
Hi. Just wondering, would you say just generally confusion is related to, or within, when we're in a doubtful state, there's a lot of questioning coming up. So I think I would usually note that as doubt. I'd use the hindrance of doubt as a note, but it's basically the same kind of.
Well, it does lead to a confusion, isn't it? Because classic doubt is reaching a fork in the road, a bifurcation. Well, should I do this or should I then? And the confusion is, I don't know which. I'm muddled up. I don't know what I should be doing in this situation. So yeah, I'd say so.
And it can be very debilitating, especially if we can't get enough clarity to even make the note of doubt or confusion.
That's why I say it's so important to do it retrospectively.
Yeah.
Because there are times when, the mindfulness, the clarity is not sufficient to overcome the confusion at that time, so that's why being willing to retrospect, to look back at experience and be able to dissect it, even, looking back, is a really helpful and important part of this entire process of mindfulness. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Jay.
Hello. Yeah, hi. Trying to think what my question was now. I'm trying to remember it. Sorry. It was just trying to. I struggled to understand some of the things you said today, or keep up with it, and then I've just sort of been okay with it, and then it made sense eventually, I think. But I suppose what I feel I've heard, or how I've made sense of, is, and I'm just checking it out really, if you think I'm on the roughly right path to what you're saying, is I've heard you say like really acceptance. So it's about accepting, whether we're talking about confusion or we're talking about various things you talked about earlier on, and just being with that, and then sort of obviously dealing with it in that respect. Am I kind of in the right area?
Yeah. So there's this lovely conditioning process, which the more you, rather than fighting with experience, the more you just accept what naturally comes up, the more clarity there is to be able to see it for what it really is. The more clarity there is in seeing it for what it really is, means the more able you are to accept it.
Yeah.
So it feeds on itself in a virtuous loop.
So just sort of going with the flow of it, really, and just chilling
not
out.
Not in the hippie way, not in the hippie way of sort of just roll a fat one and wait for the end of time, but rather sort of like being in the flow with life, which means we're developing this quality of fascination, of being intrigued by life, of being wanting curious, that's the word, isn't it? Of wanting to explore the flow. So it's not idle. Yeah. But in order to do that, we have to accept that there's going to be stuff which is difficult to deal with, because historically we have always endeavored to get rid of stuff that we don't like or doesn't suit our persona or whatever. And so there's this whole process of learning to accept the previously unacceptable, like a state of confusion, for instance.
Okay. Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you.
Good. Hey, Lucy.
Hi. I was just wondering, you said in an earlier comment, and in answer to Sarah's question about the importance of noting in hindsight something like confusion. So originally my question was going to be kind of how valid is noting in hindsight compared to if you catch it kind of straight away in a meditation or going around in life. But then in your answer to Sarah's question, it made me think that maybe kind of it's more pertinent to note in hindsight for certain things like confusion, things that are quite tough to nail down at the time. Is it kind of just as valid for me to sit now and think back for an hour of all the things that have passed away, if you like.
No.
No.
You'd be better off just noting what was arising now.
Yeah.
So at the end of a meditation, if you take the time to just write a few notes about what took place and perhaps in what order, not trying to solve anything, but just trying to increase that ability to retrospect, to remember in that way, then there will be times when you realize you hadn't been mindful, and you're able then to turn the mind back and you get more of a glimmering as to what it was. So I would say that the practice of retrospection is extraordinarily helpful because it is able to show you the transient nature of things that you were too caught up with at the time. And that is a tremendous boon, and that is really, really helpful. And I would encourage everyone to do that. There is also noting things as they unfold. And I think what happens is, well, certainly in my experience, what happened was that the noting in real time went to places that the retrospection can't. Just the depth and the power of the noting and the wisdom that's developed. And of course, you're not just developing the wisdom in that moment, it kind of percolates throughout your entire being, and all your experiences you start to see with that depth. But it's the real-time seeing that is really going to take you beyond. But that retrospection, I think, is critical, and it is important to do, because it will help you catch things that at the time you were too caught up to deal with. Do you think that's a fair balance?
Yeah.
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 Great stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Well, look, I got about an hour's sleep last night, so I'm going to bed. So I think we're done. But that was decisive, wasn't it? Not even putting it to the vote. So thanks for this evening. Really enjoyed it. Brilliant questions, as always. And hopefully I haven't just confused you all.
No.
Never forget, I think that's my point for this evening. Never forget that this teaching is taking us beyond just the mere management of states. It's taking us to a completely revolutionary way of understanding. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Paul.
Thank you.
I'll sort out for a couple of weeks.
Very helpful. Very
Brilliant.
Very interesting, very helpful. Have a good sleep. You deserve it.
Thank you.
A lot of clarity. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. See ya.
Thanks.